The marble walls of Topkapi Palace once trembled with the laughter and whispers of women who ruled from behind silk curtains. Hurrem, Safiye, Kosem, Turhan. Their names echo through these halls, a testament to an age when they held an empire in their hands, bending fate to their will. But the age of fire is over. The age of silence has begun. Turhan Sultan stood at her window, her veil like mist against the tiles, gazing out at Istanbul in the faint dawn light. She had everything: power, titles, palaces. But when she looked at the Bosphorus, she saw only ghosts reflected in the water. Every wave seemed to whisper a name. Hurrem, Kosem, Safiye. Reminders that her throne was built on the struggles of those who came before her. She was their last echo, the final queen mother of an era defined by brilliance and betrayal. Years had passed since Hurrem Sultan's death, but the memory of that night was a curse carved into Turhan's soul. She remembered the flickering lamps, the muffled footsteps, the sudden struggle, silk against silk, breath against breath. And then, silence. A silence that would never leave her. They called it justice, saying Kosem had ruled too long. But Turhan knew better. It wasn't justice. It was the price of power, the same price Hurrem had paid in heartbreak, the same one Kosem had paid in blood. Now it was Turhan's turn to carry that burden, not through murder, but through remembrance. Her son, Sultan Mehmed IV, had grown from a frightened child into a solemn young man. He rarely smiled. His dark, distant eyes seemed to belong to an old soul, born into a trembling empire and raised by women haunted by ghosts. Sometimes Turhan would find him late at night, reading the Quran by candlelight. "My son," she would whisper, "do you know the power that sits upon your shoulders?" He would look up, his voice quiet. "I know, mother, but sometimes I wish it belonged to someone else." Her heart ached. He reminded her of Suleiman the Magnificent, yet he was nothing like him. Where Suleiman's heart burned with passion, Mehmed's was cold with restraint. He would never love a woman like Hurrem, never trust a mother like Kosem, and never fear a rival like Turhan. He was the son of an empire that had forgotten how to feel. Turhan inherited Hurrem's throne of influence, but the world had changed. A Valida Sultan once bent ministers to her will with a single glance. Her letters could command armies. Now her words were carried away on the wind, ignored by men tired of women's rule. The Sultan's viziers, especially the ruthless Koprulu Mehmed Pasha, slowly reclaimed the power Hurrem and Kosem had built. Turhan watched from behind her golden screen, her hands still. They thought her powerless, but her dark, patient eyes saw everything. When the vizier spoke of war, she remembered Hurrem's counsel to Suleiman. When he spoke of reform, she heard Kosem's warnings of betrayal, but she said nothing. Turhan had learned what none of the others had. Sometimes silence is sharper than any sword. As years passed, the palace became less a home and more a mausoleum of memory. The harem, once alive with music and rivalry, grew quiet. The fountains no longer sang. The gilded mirrors reflected only the fading afternoon light. At night, Turhan would walk barefoot and veiled through the silent halls, and sometimes she heard them. Hurrem's laughter echoing from the bathhouse, Kosem's whisper in the curtains, the rustle of silk, as though unseen figures still moved just behind her. Were they ghosts, or just memories too heavy to die? She didn't know, but their presence wasn't cruel. It was comforting. It was a reminder that for all their ambition and tragedy, they had one thing in common. They loved the empire more than they loved themselves. Outside the palace walls, the Ottoman Empire trembled like an old man nearing his end. Wars with Europe grew disastrous. The treasury bled gold. In the taverns of Istanbul, men cursed the sultans and mocked the sultanate of shadows, blaming the empire's weakness on the queens who had once commanded armies with whispers. Turhan heard every insult, but she didn't answer. She only prayed. She knew history wouldn't be kind to them, the women who built an empire from behind silk curtains. But she also knew their power was never truly understood. Hurrem ruled through love, Kosem through fear, and Turhan through faith. Yet, all three had ruled, and their legacy endured long after the men they served had fallen. In her later years, Turhan became quieter still. Her gaze often drifted to the horizon, as if seeing something beyond time. One evening she visited the mausoleum of Suleiman and Hurrem. Placing her hand on the cold marble of Hurrem's tomb, she whispered, "You began this, my sister, and I have carried it to its end. But was it worth the pain?" The deep silence that answered felt almost alive. Perhaps Hurrem's spirit was listening. Perhaps, like all queens, she wept in the end. With her political power waning, Turhan turned to the only power she had left: faith. She began building her greatest gift to Istanbul, the Yenni Mosque, standing proudly by the Golden Horn. Each day, she watched its minarets rise, its domes catching the sunlight like silver mirrors. "If the world forgets my name," she said, "let them at least remember this house of God." When it was completed, she walked through its courtyard barefoot, tears glistening beneath her veil. Every stone was a memorial not to conquest but to the survival of the women who came before her. When Turhan died in 1683, the empire mourned quietly. There was no chaos, no screaming in the night, just silence. The same silence that had followed Hurrem to her grave and wrapped around Kosem's final breath. The sultanate of women was gone. The age of queens had ended. The harem became a gilded cage of obedience, not power. And yet, in the stillness of those halls, the walls still whisper. Centuries later, visitors walk these same corridors in Topkapi Palace. They see the golden lattices where decrees were whispered, touch the screens where secrets were traded for survival, and stand in the chambers where love and ambition once danced. And they feel it. A faint but undeniable echo. A trace of perfume in the air. A whisper of silk. A memory of laughter that refuses to fade, because the empire of silence was never truly silent. As the sun sets over Istanbul, its light touching the domes of the Yenni Mosque, the past seems to breathe again. Hurrem's laughter, Kosem's wisdom, Turhan's prayer, all carried on the wind. And beneath it all, a quiet, eternal voice. Power ends, beauty fades, but memory is forever. The candle in the harem flickers, a single flame against the darkness. That is Hurrem's fire, and it still burns. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey back in time. If you were moved by the stories of these incredible women, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more hidden histories. We'll see you in the next one.